They thought it was over. When Jin-Woo fell, when the heart of the battlefield went silent, the world held its breath. But death wasn't the end for him. It was the beginning. Somewhere between life and the void, he opened his eyes, and standing before him was the true Shadow Monarch. Not an enemy, but the truth he'd been searching for. Jin-Woo didn't just die. He remembered everything. Who he was, why the war never ended, and what he was meant to become. When he came back, he wasn't just stronger, he was awakened. And the three kings who once thought they could crush him, he erased them like they were nothing. But just as the battlefield fell quiet again, a new presence rose. Colder, older, beyond even the ancient kings. The Dragon Monarch, the king of destruction, had sensed it. The true heir had returned. And now, the final war was coming. The hunters standing around just froze. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. The Monarch of Beasts somehow had managed to land a devastating blow on Jin-Woo, and blood was pouring out. Jin-Woo collapsed to the ground, confused, stunned. How could this happen? His level had risen. He should have been stronger. He was supposed to survive anything, and yet he was about to die. The Frost Monarch walked up almost casually and leaned over him. "Mind if I borrow your blade for a second?" he said with a cold smirk. Without hesitation, he stabbed Jin-Woo with it. Mocking him, the Monarch continued, "What's wrong? No miracle healing this time? Or are you finally out of juice?" He started painting a vivid, horrifying picture. How the world would fall, how cities would become graveyards, how rivers of blood would carve through the earth. And worst of all, Jin-Woo's homeland, frozen in endless suffering, trapped on the edge of life and death for eternity. All because Jin-Woo wasn't strong enough to stop them. "And you," the Monarch whispered, "will die with nothing but hatred left in your heart. And that's the reward I crave most." Jin-Woo could barely move. His strength dropped to zero. And then, darkness swallowed him. Player death confirmed. But then, just as suddenly, like a different system message appeared. Iron Body passive skill activated. All conditions met. In a flash, Jin-Woo's eyes flew open. He gasped, clutching his chest, feeling for the wound, but he was alive. Breathing heavy, he looked around. White walls, hospital smell, beeping machines. He was back, in a hospital bed, just like the first time, after the double dungeon. Before he could make sense of it, the door swung open and a few officials from the Hunters Association walked in, along with a man he vaguely recognized, Jung-shik. "You all right?" one of them asked cautiously. Jin-Woo shook his head, trying to clear it. Where are the Monarchs? What happened? How am I still alive?" Jung-shik, standing there with a puzzled expression, started explaining. First, he wasn't the president of the association anymore. He was now the supreme prosecutor. Second, he didn't have a clue about any monarchs, only reports about animated statues running wild. Third, Jung-shik was confused why Jin-Woo acted like they knew each other, because as far as he was concerned, they'd never met before. That's when the realization hit Jin-Woo like a hammer. He hadn't just survived, he had gone back in time. He rubbed his face with both hands, his mind racing. The hospital ward was the same. The feeling was the same. The place he woke up after the double dungeon, identical. He checked his body, it still had Reed's fury, still had all his artifacts. Nothing was missing. But the timeline was wrong. He staggered out of bed just as his younger sister burst into the room. "Little bro, what the heck are you doing?" she gasped. "Please tell me you didn't hit your head too." She squinted at him, confused. "Wait, are you really my brother? You look different. Taller, built. Like what the heck happened to you?" Jin-Woo gave her a soft, apologetic smile. "Yeah, I guess I changed a little." He told her he had things to do, needed to head straight to the association. She stared wide-eyed when he casually dropped that he knew she'd been thinking about ditching school to become a hunter. "And listen," he added seriously, "hating school isn't a reason to throw your life away. Stay in school. Forget all that hunter nonsense." She looked completely stunned. How did he know that? This was the first time they had officially met in this timeline. As Jin-Woo left the hospital room, a dark realization gnawed at the back of his mind. His shadow soldiers, they were gone, completely. But he could rebuild them. He would rebuild them. Still, 2 years. He'd been thrown back 2 whole years into the past. Why? And by who? At the association entrance, 2 rookie staff members whispered nervously to each other. That guy, the one nobody paid attention to because he looked so plain, had suddenly skyrocketed to S rank. And now, He was too strong for them to even measure. One of them stammered, asking if Jin-Woo needed help. "I'm here to see the president," Jin-Woo said coolly. They froze. We can notify him you're coming." "No need," Jin-Woo cut them off with a calm smile. "I know the way." The staffer stood there blinking, totally confused. Meanwhile, Jin-Woo stepped into the elevator alone, the doors closing with a soft hiss behind him. And he began his ascent toward whatever awaited him at the top. In the elevator with Jin-Woo was another hunter, one who was clearly lost in his own shady thoughts, plotting about which fake story he could spin today and how he might snag a few more contracts under the radar. The guy figured sure it was risky to move behind the back of the department head. But hey, risk was part of the game. Jin-Woo watched him for a second. He knew exactly who this hunter was, and what he was up to. Calmly, Jin-Woo stepped closer and spoke low, almost like a warning. "You've got an autopsy skill, right?" he said. "You've been hiding it, and pretty soon, someone's gonna come looking for you. Someone who doesn't give second chances. If you pull anything dirty during a mission, I don't care who you are, I'll kill you myself." The guy stiffened instantly, cold sweat pouring down his forehead. He just stood there, frozen, staring at Jin-Woo like he was looking at a ghost. But Jin-Woo didn't even wait for a reaction. He just kept walking, stepping out of the elevator and moving down the hallway like nothing happened. A few minutes later, he stopped in front of a heavy office door. He knocked once, lightly, then pushed it open. Inside, the president of the association looked up, surprised, but also smiling a little. "Nice to meet you," Jin-Woo said politely, stepping inside. It felt weird, like meeting an old friend he hadn't seen in years. The president leaned back in his chair, studying Jin-Woo carefully. "Seems like the young hunter already knows all the formalities," he chuckled. "Coming straight to me right after your rank evaluation, huh?" Jin-Woo smiled. "I've got a business proposal." The president raised an eyebrow, motioning for him to continue. "I need access to Jeju Island," Jin-Woo said, voice steady. "I'm gonna wipe out all the ants there. But for that, I need you to remove the limit on how many hunters can enter the dungeon." The president blinked, stunned. He knew Jeju Island, but everybody did. It was a death zone. Countless raids had been launched there, and almost every single one had ended in disaster. He opened his mouth to argue, but then stopped. He really looked at Jin-Woo, and in that moment, the president saw something terrifying. An overwhelming power radiating from the young man before him. A power that easily surpassed even national-level hunters. Before he could speak again, a bright notification window appeared in front of Jin-Woo's eyes. "World restart detected. Accept. Reject." He froze. Flashes of his memories hit him all at once. The comrades he'd fought beside, the friends he said goodbye to, the monsters he had slain, his mother's tearful awakening after years of coma, the wars he had survived, the armies he had built. Jin-Woo clenched his fists. No, it was enough. He couldn't keep hiding anymore. He wasn't going to live trapped in a fake world. He wasn't going to pretend everything was fine. In a heartbeat, the world around him shifted. Everything crumbled. The fake peace, the fake stability. Another figure appeared, stepping toward him from the shadows. An ancient, terrifying presence. It was the King of the Dead. "You created this world," the King of the Dead said, voice like the cracking of an old tomb. "Out of your own desperate desire to rewrite the past, but even in death, you clung to life." The king's hollow eyes stared right into Jin-Woo's soul. "This place is mine. Here you can do whatever you wish. Bend death, control power, create, destroy. You could stay here forever unbothered. Or you can walk away." Jin-Woo stayed silent, heart pounding. "You and I," the king said softly, are one and the same." And with that, the King of the Dead disappeared, leaving only the heavy truth behind. Meanwhile, outside in the real world, the battle had not stopped. Hunters gathered, looking up at Jin-Woo's still body, wondering if they had lost their last hope. The White Tiger Guild leader gritted his teeth. If Jin-Woo, the strongest among them, was down, what chance did the rest have? Up on a rooftop, a lone hunter clutched his weapon tightly, trying to stay hopeful. They had to win. They had to. Suddenly, a terrifying energy flooded the battlefield. The Monarchs, the Frost Monarch, and the Beast Monarch felt it too. Something was wrong. As they moved in to finish off Jin-Woo's seemingly lifeless body, another figure slammed into them with explosive force, sending both monarchs crashing backward. Everyone turned to look. Standing there, protecting Jin-Woo was a man, powerful, grim, unwavering. It was Jin-Woo's father. He had waited long enough, and now he had finally decided to fight. As soon as the two monsters slammed into the nearest wall, Jin-Woo's father stepped forward, his voice calm but ice cold. "From now on," he said firmly, "no one will lay another hand on my son." While this was happening deep inside his mind, Jin-Woo stood face to face with the Lord of Darkness, and the ancient being began to speak. "In the beginning," the Lord of Darkness said, his voice carrying the weight of endless time. "There was only light and darkness." Jin-Woo listened silently, feeling the story pull him in deeper with every word. An absolute being ruled over it all. From the light, he created the messengers of God, beings of purity and power. From the darkness, he birthed the monarchs, creatures of destruction. The Lord's eyes darkened. Since the beginning, the monarchs lived only to destroy the world, and the messengers existed to protect it. War was inevitable, endless, bloody, savage. Jin-Woo's hands clenched slightly at his sides. But after countless ages of slaughter, one of the brightest fragments of light could no longer endure it. He dared to approach the absolute being and ask, "Why? Why do you stand by while we kill and die in your name? Why don't you help us? Are you deaf to the cries of those who worship you?" The Lord of Darkness paused for a moment, as if letting the memory sting. But the absolute being said nothing. No answer, no mercy, no help. Jin-Woo frowned, feeling anger bubbling inside him even though he wasn't part of that ancient world. The fragment of light realized the awful truth, the Lord said bitterly. To the absolute being, their pain, their death, was nothing but music, entertainment. Jin-Woo's breath caught in his throat. Still, everyone bowed, everyone praised, everyone obeyed, even though they knew their fates meant death. The Lord's tone grew sharper. Those who followed the rules, they still died. Those who fought bravely, died. The war never ended, until the messengers of God, hearts full of despair, finally rebelled. Jin-Woo's heart pounded harder. The king of the dead, me, was one of the few who stood against that rebellion. I stayed loyal. I fought and lost. My army was destroyed. The Lord of Darkness chuckled darkly. But when I opened my eyes in the depths of the void, I felt something new, a power, an inheritance, the absolute being's final gift. Jin-Woo's eyes widened. I rose again, no longer just a king. I became the Lord of Darkness, and when I spoke the command, "Arise," the dead rose with me. I had created a new army, the first Shadow Army. Jin-Woo could almost see it, a battlefield covered with blackened corpses standing up, answering his call. But it was too late, the Lord went on. The surviving fragments of light, the ones who killed the absolute being, declared themselves the new gods. They called themselves the rulers. The name left a bitter taste in Jin-Woo's mouth. Armed with divine weapons, they began hunting down the monarchs one by one. The first to fall was the king of the giants, imprisoned and broken. The monarchs realized they needed help, and so they turned to me, the one they once feared. The Lord's gaze sharpened. They made me their 9th monarch, the Shadow Monarch. He clenched his fist. My army grew with every fallen soldier. Every battlefield fed me more strength. Even the monarchs, even the rulers themselves began to fear what I was becoming. Jin-Woo felt a shiver run down his spine. Some monarchs, driven by terror, surrendered their forces to me. Others, like the Beast Monarch, tucked their tails and fled. The Demon Monarch, the White Flame Monarch, betrayed me and paid the price. The Lord of Darkness spoke slower now. The rulers came down from the heavens. They kneeled before me, begged me to end the war. They said they had no more reason to fight, and in honor of what we once were, I chose peace. He closed his eyes briefly, but it was all a lie. Jin-Woo held his breath. The moment I let my guard down, they drove their spears into me, just like they had done to the absolute being. A heavy silence hung in the air between them. I survived, the Lord said coldly. I withdrew into the shadows, waiting for the right time to strike back. The monarchs scattered across the dimensions. Some came here, to your world. Jin-Woo felt his blood run cold. Here, the Lord continued, there was no one strong enough to oppose them. Humanity was weak. The extermination of mankind was inevitable. He raised his hand slightly, and in Jin-Woo's mind, he could see it. Burning cities, blood flooding the streets, skies blackened by smoke. A nightmare, just like what he once saw in the demonic castle. And now, it was about to happen in real life. Jin-Woo listened carefully, standing at the edge of an invisible line between worlds. The Lord of Darkness' voice echoed deep inside him, heavy with centuries of sorrow and truth. You understand now, don't you? The Dark Lord said. This world, it's only waiting for its end. Jin-Woo clenched his fists. The monarchs, the Lord of Darkness continued, exist only to destroy. The rulers, they exist to create, but not the way you think. His eyes narrowed. For the rulers, what matters is not the creatures living in the world. It's the world itself. Even if every human perishes, as long as the planet survives, they believe they've fulfilled their mission. The truth struck Jin-Woo like a hammer. It explained so much. When the rulers realized the monarch's power was growing out of control, the Dark Lord said, they intervened. They sent their armies down to Earth. He shook his head, but they were too late. By the time they arrived, all of the world was already a graveyard. Anger twisted in the Dark Lord's voice. Furious at their failure, they decided to use a forbidden weapon, a relic of the absolute being's power, the Cup of Reincarnation. Jin-Woo's heart skipped a beat. The cup allowed them to rewind time by 10 years. The Lord's eyes glowed faintly in the shadows. They tried to save the Earth, but humanity was not ready. There was no magic back then, no means to resist the Monarchs' armies. The world fell again. Jin-Woo lowered his gaze, picturing the endless loop of destruction and rebirth. And so, the Lord said, the rulers made another decision. They created the hunters, ordinary humans, gifted with magical power, soldiers for a battle they never asked for. Jin-Woo felt the weight of it. It explained why so many dungeons appeared, why monsters flooded the earth, why humanity had to awaken. But, the Lord of Darkness continued with a bitter smile, while the rulers armed humanity to preserve the world, the Monarchs, they used humans too, as shells, as weapons. Jin-Woo's fists trembled. The Monarchs were patient. They harvested the magical energy the rulers spread across the earth. They waited until they could twist it for themselves. The trap had been set long ago, Jin-Woo realized, and humanity, even the rulers, Vasoi Wakfaris, had walked right into it. But controlling such massive power, the Dark Lord said, required a perfect vessel, a body that could endure the overwhelming force. The Lord's voice dropped lower. Neither the rulers nor the Dragon Monarch ever found one. They searched desperately. And then, the architect, the greatest mage under the Dragon King, proposed a deal. Jin-Woo leaned in. The architect promised he could find the perfect vessel, someone with incredible magical potential, someone who could rewrite destiny itself. Jin-Woo's breath caught. He already knew where this was going. And then, the Lord smiled faintly. One day, he found you. Jin-Woo's chest tightened. A man, weak, constantly walking the tightrope between life and death, but smart, resilient, a man who could defy the system itself. The Lord's gaze softened. You built your strength step by step, like leveling up in a game. Jin-Woo finally understood. The architect protested, the Dark Lord said. He believed you were unworthy, too weak. But, Jin-Woo asked, voice rough, you chose me anyway. The Lord of Darkness nodded. Because you had something no one else had, the will to survive, the spirit to fight. It was overwhelming. The truth behind everything finally laid bare. You ask why I turned against the Monarchs? The Dark Lord continued almost sadly. Because siding with the rulers is betrayal to the Monarchs. But siding with you, he paused, siding with you felt right. Jin-Woo stared at him. You became me, the Lord said, and I became you. A heavy silence settled between them. And now, the Dark Lord said, you must choose. The options stood before him like two doors. Stay here, in a perfect illusion of peace and bliss, forever, or return to the real world, where death awaited at every step. But Jin-Woo, he had already made his choice. He lifted his head. Tell me one thing, Jin-Woo said. Why didn't you stay with the rulers? You could have. The Lord's expression turned distant. Because I realized I don't belong with them. I don't belong anywhere. Jin-Woo smiled faintly. Me too, he said. The Lord chuckled, a low, echoing sound. Our paths part here, he said. When you die again, you will truly inherit all my power. And after that? Jin-Woo asked. The Lord's form began to fade, like mist. Then you will become the true Shadow Monarch. A bright, blinding light engulfed everything around Jin-Woo. The system, the strange game-like entity that had guided him, began to collapse. System destruction in progress. One by one, all restrictions lifted. Shadow soldiers began to reappear around him, one after another. The generals, the commanders, the ones who had fought by his side. Baru, Igris, Tank. They were all back. Their auras flared stronger than ever. And then, at the center of it all, Jin-Woo himself. The light faded, and when he opened his eyes again, he was standing in the middle of a raging battlefield. The Monarchs, those wretched creatures, turned toward him with cold eyes. They realized it. The fragment of light, the one they feared most, had returned. If they didn't destroy Jin-Woo now, if they didn't strike him down right here, then this world would slip through their fingers forever. The two Monarchs slammed into the nearby wall with a thunderous crash. Jin-Woo's father stood tall, breathing heavily, eyes fierce. No one touches my son anymore, he said coldly, his voice cutting through the ruined battlefield. Meanwhile, deep inside himself, Jin-Woo was still locked in that strange communion, listening to the Lord of Darkness tell the story of how the world fell into this endless cycle of destruction. Light and darkness, creation and ruin. It was all inevitable, it always had been. But outside, the battle wasn't waiting. The Beast Monarch shook off the rubble, his rage barely contained. You're wasting time, he growled to the Cold Monarch. We need to kill him now. They lunged at Jin-Woo's father, furious. Steel clashed against ice and claws, but Jin-Woo's father, a veteran of countless battles, moved like a ghost through the chaos. He read the trajectory of every blow before it landed, sidestepping and striking back with surgical precision. The Cold Monarch narrowed his eyes. That fighting style, it was familiar. Only warriors who had faced death 1,000 times could move like that. When the Cold Monarch tried to unleash his frozen breath, Jin-Woo's father didn't hesitate. He launched himself forward, kicking the Monarch square in the face and sending him crashing into a nearby building. Before the beast monarch could react, the father was already on him, slashing with a small, worn dagger. The beast monarch howled in pain and staggered back, clutching his wound. "You'll pay for that," he bellowed. "I'll rip you to pieces." But suddenly the beast monarch froze. A terrifying pressure was rising behind him. He turned and saw Jin-Woo standing, alive, awake, his mana surging like a storm about to tear the heavens apart. The beast monarch cursed under his breath and instinctively leapt backward, putting as much distance between himself and the rising shadow monarch as possible. Inside the ruins, the cold monarch, pulling himself from the debris, glared furiously. "You coward!" he shouted after the beast monarch. "You promised to fight!" But the beast monarch only laughed, already opening a portal to escape. "I promised to fight the human shadow," he sneered. "Not the real one." The cold monarch's rage shook the air. Pathetic, coward, but he had no choice now. He would face the shadow monarch alone. Snarling, the cold monarch raised his arms and began weaving a monstrous spell, gathering enough mana to freeze an entire city. Hunters nearby scrambled to flee, sensing the coming disaster. From high above, colossal ice shards formed, aiming straight for Jin-Woo's father, who still stood guarding his unconscious son. An ice spear shot downward. It pierced through the father's arm, and a massive glacier plummeted toward him. But it never landed. The glacier shattered midair, and standing there and among the falling shards was a familiar figure, General Igris. The Shadow General raised his sword high, his crimson cape whipping in the wind. "With such pathetic strength," Igris declared, "you are not worthy to call yourself a king." The cold monarch's eyes widened in disbelief. The Shadow Army had returned. And not just returned, it was stronger than ever. He felt it. The Lord of Shadows had fully awakened. Jin-Woo's ice confinement cracked and exploded outward, shards raining down like stars. He stepped forward, dark energy swirling around him. "I'd be shocked too," Jin-Woo said, his voice low and calm, "if I were in your shoes." He glanced around quickly. The beast monarch was already gone, but Jin-Woo wasn't about to let the cold monarch escape. "You," Jin-Woo said coldly, locking eyes with him. "You're not going anywhere." The cold monarch, for the first time, felt true fear. The gap between them, the overwhelming wall of power, it kept growing, higher and higher, until even the stars seemed distant. Darkness fell over the battlefield, a suffocating, endless night. The cold monarch took a staggering step back, trembling. Meanwhile, far away in a dense jungle, the beast monarch emerged from his portal. He stumbled forward, desperate to hide, to run, but it was useless. Death was already there, breathing down his neck. He could feel it, that crushing aura, that boundless killing intent. No matter how far he ran, no matter how well he hid, he would never escape the Shadow Monarch. Not now, not ever. Instinct screamed at him to bow, to submit, but pride held him in place. For now, the moment the beast monarch bowed his head, he let out a pitiful groan and began begging for mercy. "I am unworthy to stand against you," he pleaded, lowering his gaze to the ground. "Please, Shadow Monarch, show me mercy. Accept me as your subject. I swear the Dragon Emperor is already on his way here with his army, and I will help you defeat him." Jin-Woo looked down at him, silent for a long moment. Then, with a calm, cold voice, he answered, "Fine." But just as the beast monarch's shoulders sagged in relief, he suddenly smirked, flashing his fangs. "You're not the real Shadow Monarch," he spat, his tone dripping with venom. "The true Shadow Monarch would never have forgiven my betrayal. You're nothing but a fake. It's better to buy some time until the Dragon Emperor arrives. And when he does, we'll tear you apart piece by piece, boy. I'll chew your bones myself." That was it. Jin-Woo's expression darkened. He stepped forward, his voice low and steady. "I never said I forgave you." He raised his hand, showing 5 scars. Old wounds, deep, brutal. "These," Jin-Woo said, "are the wounds you left me. 5 times you tried to kill me. If you can endure 5 strikes, I'll grant you forgiveness." The beast monarch's eyes widened. "You dare mock me?" he roared. "You think you can toy with the king of beasts? Know your place, human?" But Jin-Woo didn't flinch. In the blink of an eye, a blade appeared in his hand, gleaming black under the dull sky. With a single fluid motion, he closed the distance and sliced off the beast monarch's leg. The beast monarch howled, falling to one knee. "That's one," Jin-Woo said coldly. 4 more to go. Meanwhile, back in the ruined center of Seoul, the battle raged on. The cold monarch was furious. On one side, an ant soldier, Beru, was healing fallen hunters. On the other, Igris, the saint of the Shadow Army, blocked his every move. The cold monarch gritted his teeth. The Shadow Monarch's army had fully returned, and it was a nightmare. Every time the cold monarch tried to expend mana for a spell, the Shadow Army regenerated faster than he could tear them down. The mana cost was piling up, and he had no way to replenish it. It was hopeless. In a fit of rage, he smashed Igris aside and tore his own cloak off, snarling. But just as he turned, he saw someone stepping out of the shadows. Hunter Jin-Ho, and in his hands, the 2 dragon fangs. the ones that had belonged to the Beast Monarch. You, the Cold Monarch gasped. You killed Monarch Fang? Jin-Woo stepped forward behind Jin-Ho, his voice like ice. Monarch Pestilence, Monarch Fang, Monarch Cold. You'll all die here today. The Cold Monarch screamed in rage, swinging his magic wildly, but Jin-Woo was already moving. First blade, slash, second blade, slash. The Cold Monarch staggered backward, his body torn open. He tried to retaliate, gathering ice magic around his trident, but Jin-Woo caught the trident mid-swing with one hand, stopping it like it was nothing. With his other hand, he drove a blade straight into the Cold Monarch's chest. You're not the only one counting, Jin-Woo said, his voice low. The Beast Monarch died on the fourth strike. The Cold Monarch's eyes widened in horror as his body began to dissolve into mist, evaporating into the air. He was gone. Now Jin-Woo turned to find the man who had shielded him all this time. Where is he? He whispered, scanning the battlefield. Baru, fluttering nearby, sadly shook his head. He disappeared, my king. But then Jin-Woo spotted it, a familiar sword lying on the ground. He rushed over. There, slumped against a shattered wall, was his father, battered, bloodied, barely breathing. The sight broke Jin-Woo's heart. His father opened one eye, smiled weakly, and whispered, "This is the price of divine power." He didn't seem afraid. He was ready to die. But Jin-Woo wasn't ready to lose him. He dropped to his knees in front of his father. Tears pricked his eyes. "You thought I wouldn't notice?" Jin-Woo said quietly. "You really thought I wouldn't understand?" His father's smile faded. He coughed. "I had no choice. After the boss fight, I was trapped in the world of chaos. A ruler offered me his power, told me to kill the Monarchs, including the one destined to inherit the Shadow Lord's throne. You." Jin-Woo clenched his fists. "I agreed," his father said. "But when I saw you, when I realized the monster they spoke of was my own son, I couldn't." He laughed bitterly, the sound dry and broken. "I disobeyed. I watched from afar. I saw how you grew, how you fought, how you survived. The rulers who once sought to prevent the Shadow Monarch's return had changed their minds. The Dragon Emperor was coming, and only Jin-Woo could stop him." His father's voice grew softer. "I was proud of you, son." There was a long silence. Then Jin-Woo asked, voice shaking, "Did you miss me?" His father's tears spilled over. "Every second," he said. "Even when I couldn't see you, I was always watching, always missing you." And then Jin-Woo reached out, pulling his father into a tight hug. They stayed like that, father and son, wrapped in each other's arms, crying quietly for everything they had lost and everything they had found again. "I hated you," Jin-Woo whispered, "but I missed you more." His father smiled through his tears. "And I," he said, "have always been proud of the man you became." Jin-Woo's father sat there, broken, battered, but not once did he regret it, not for a single heartbeat. If anything, he just wished he could have a little more time to sit with his son. A little more time, just like this. His voice, weak but filled with warmth, spoke one last time. "I'm sorry for not being a better father," he said, smiling through the pain. And with that, his body slowly dissolved into a bright, gentle light until he was no longer there. Across town, in a modest apartment, Jin-Woo's mother stood by the window, staring out with wide, fearful eyes. The city outside was gone. All that remained was rubble, ashes, and the distant rumble of death. Jin-Woo's little sister sat curled up on the couch, hugging her knees to her chest, trembling. Her voice cracked as she asked, "Mom, is it time?" Her mother didn't answer immediately. She just kept looking out that window, her voice finally breaking the heavy silence. "Yeah, baby, I think it's time." Meanwhile, back in the center of Seoul, surrounded by broken buildings and blood-stained streets, Jin-Woo stood tall, head tilted back, his fists clenched at his sides. He shouted into the skies, a cry so fierce, so raw, it seemed to tear open the heavens themselves. "You will all pay," he roared. "Mark my words, every single one of you." His voice, carrying the weight of endless pain and fury, echoed through the empty city. The desperate cry of the Shadow Monarch shook the world. It was the moment the curtain of the final war was drawn. High above, a quadcopter hovered over the ruins, broadcasting live footage. On the screen, reporters announced in trembling voices, "Thomas Andre, alive. Injured, but stable. The monsters, gone. Seoul, destroyed, but standing." Emergency sirens wailed through the cracked streets. Ambulances raced through the ruins, pulling survivors out from under broken concrete. Everywhere the quadcopter looked, there was only devastation and ashes. Eventually, Jin-Woo returned home. He wrapped his arms around his mother and sister in a tight, unbreakable hug. The kind of hug that says, "I'm here. You're safe." Meanwhile, exhausted hunters collapsed near the rubble of what used to be buildings. They had fought with everything they had, and they looked it. At the Hunter Association headquarters, the new chairman sat before a massive monitor, watching the aftermath unfold. He exhaled shakily. "It's finally over," he whispered to no one. "The demonic beast, the plague monarch, they're gone." He remembered Jin-Woo's promise, "I will wipe them into dust." And he had done exactly that. The cold elf monster who dared to take the previous chairman's life, reduced to nothing but a bitter memory. But the peace was short-lived. Just a few days later, hunters gathered outside the association building, staring up in horror, because in the sky, a new gate had opened. Massive, menacing, swirling like a hurricane ready to swallow the earth whole. Thomas Andre stood among them, staring upward grimly. "So it begins," he muttered. This wasn't just any gate. This was a gate unlike anything humanity had ever seen. So massive it could be seen from miles away, and from within. An army was waiting. The hunters readied themselves. Weapons drawn, mana flaring, they braced for the worst. But then, Jin-Woo stepped forward. He raised a hand. "Nobody move," he said, voice firm. The head of the association turned, confused. "Why? They're right there. We have to. Trust me." Jin-Woo interrupted calmly. "It's fine." No one understood. Not the hunters, not the leaders, no one. After all, who would be fine facing an entire army of monsters? But Jin-Woo just walked forward, all by himself, towards the terrifying figures emerging from the gate. The lead monster, a giant shadow soldier, approached. Slowly, carefully, it knelt down before Jin-Woo, lowering its head in respect, and with a deep, booming voice it spoke. "Commander-in-Chief Million Baran and the entire Shadow Army welcome their lord's return." Everyone froze. Even Thomas Andre, standing off to the side, turned to his comrade. "You're seeing this too, right?" "Yeah," the man muttered, stunned. Three shadow creatures, each strong enough to destroy humanity alone. And they're kneeling." Jin-Woo's eyes widened as he took it all in. The army, the dragons, the soldiers, all of them. They weren't here to fight. They were here to serve. It was a final gift, a parting gift left by the former Shadow Monarch, Ashborn. And with them, Jin-Woo knew the battlefield was ready. Days passed and the Korean Hunter Association was buried under international chaos. The American Hunter Bureau demanded information. The DHS begged for evacuation instructions. TV producers tried to book Jin-Woo for interviews. One guy at the meeting grumbled, "I'm getting tired of hearing about this Jin-Woo and his perverted army of monsters." But the chairman just smiled tiredly. "Rather have them complaining about too many interviews," he said, than sobbing about dead hunters. He leaned back in his chair, staring up at the ceiling. Truth was, they were lucky, more than lucky, because right now, the world's last hope was the man who had vanished yet again, like a ghost, Jin-Woo, their shadow monarch, and whether they understood it yet or not, he was humanity's only shield. The chairman leaned back in his chair, rubbing his forehead. He sighed. "I guess I was too biased against Hunter Jin-Woo," he admitted quietly. But where is he now? Far away from the chatter and politics, Jin-Woo was deep in the middle of his vast army of shadows. As he walked among them, the towering commanders bowed respectfully and the soldiers whispered in awe. Commander-in-Chief Baran stepped forward, his massive figure casting a long shadow across the ground. He respectfully suggested something Jin-Woo hadn't really thought about before. "My lord," Baran rumbled, "perhaps we should divide the army. Send some units away to prepare. Secure the lands." Jin-Woo gave a small smile. "Yeah," he said, "that's a good idea. The world won't save itself." At that moment, Commander Baru, the ever-loyal Ant General, approached. His voice was low but full of excitement. "My king, I wish to request the title of Commander-in-Chief." Jin-Woo blinked at him, surprised. "Since when do you want to be Commander-in-Chief?" Baru straightened proudly. "As a general, I wish to test my strength against the Commander-in-Chief." Jin-Woo laughed under his breath. "All right, if that's what you want." And so, in the middle of a field of endless shadows, two giants squared off. Baru let out a bone-chilling roar, shaking the ground. Across from him, Baran, with his massive greatsword Mikati, simply waited. When Baru lunged, the battlefield trembled. Baran moved like a mountain, slow maybe, but every swing of his sword carried enough force to split the earth. Jin-Woo watched, arms crossed, eyebrows raised. "Man," he muttered, "he fights just like Igris, but that sword is huge." Baru moved fast, darting like a shadow, but Baran caught him mid-strike. With a brutal heave, he slammed Baru down into the ground, pinning him. Jin-Woo whistled low. "Guess that's why he's the Commander-in-Chief." But then, Baru, relentless as ever, wrenched himself free and countered. The two monsters clashed again, shaking the ground like thunder. Meanwhile, halfway across the world, at Beijing International Airport, a young hunter named Jigong was mobbed by reporters. One reporter shoved a mic in his face, beaming. Sir, how does it feel? All the hunters have returned safely from the rescue mission in South Korea. Proud moment for your country." Jigong scratched the back of his head, looking bored. Then, with a shrug, he said, "What's the point of having a head if you're just gonna wear a hat?" The reporters blinked, confused. "You ever even look at a world map? South Korea's right there, buddy. If you don't like how we do things, why don't you catch the monsters yourself? He flashed a cocky grin. I'm a 7-star hunter. I went to South Korea to help Jin-Woo, a guy who even I can't handle. The reporters scrambled to write down every word, but suddenly Ji-gong's smirk faded. He looked up at the sky, and his blood ran cold. Hovering above, a massive, yawning gate. Something dark stirred beyond it. Back in Seoul, the duel between Baru and Baran ended. Baru lay panting on the ground, his body battered but his spirit unbroken. He looked up at Jin-Woo. I can still fight, he gasped. Jin-Woo chuckled. Geez, Baru, you don't have to be commander-in-chief to stand by me. Baru blinked, confused. You mean? Jin-Woo smiled warmly. You can stand on my left side, always. Baru's mandibles clicked with excitement, overwhelmed by his king's generosity. Nearby, a few other shadow soldiers started gathering, eyeing each other hungrily. Clearly, they wanted a shot at the title, too. Jin-Woo just shook his head. No more fights, he said, laughing. You guys are standing behind me. He turned and saw something strange. A group of ants were dragging logs, stacking stones, building something. Dragons nearby snorted smoke into the sky, watching curiously. One shadow soldier clutched a glowing magic orb and unleashed a stream of fire that ripped apart the clouds. The whole battlefield shimmered under the heat. Jin-Woo scratched his head. What are they doing? Commander Baran stepped forward and bowed. My lord, he said, they are building a resting place for you. Jin-Woo's chest tightened. Even now, after all the battles, after all the wars, they still wanted to serve him, still wanted him to be comfortable. Baran went on. We figured it would be too cramped, trying to squeeze everyone back into the rift. Jin-Woo smiled faintly. They stood together watching the army work. After a while, Jin-Woo turned to Baran, a question tugging at his heart. Baran, he asked, do you ever miss Ashbourne? Baran's gaze grew distant. I was his first warrior, he said slowly. I stood with him, even when the rulers turned against the absolute being. He looked up at the sky, remembering. Back then, we were born from the fruit of the world tree, a tree so vast its branches touched the heavens. He fell silent, lost in memories from an age long gone. And Jin-Woo realized, standing there in the sunset, that this wasn't just a war between monarchs and rulers. It was a war built on loyalty, betrayal, endless cycles of sorrow. And now, it was his turn to finish it. His turn to be the last king standing. Later that morning, Jin-Woo bent down to open the fridge, pulling out some groceries. Suddenly, his mom walked into the kitchen, her face soft with concern. You okay? She asked gently. He blinked at her, a little caught off guard. Why wouldn't I be? She smiled sadly. Your father, before he left on his dangerous missions, he'd always cook for me too. It's clear enough without a test that you're definitely his son. Jin-Woo chuckled quietly and told her not to worry. Everything's fine, Mom. Just then, a knock at the door. Jin-Woo set down the groceries and went to open it. Standing there was a man he didn't expect. It was Jin-Ho's father. They ended up walking together through a park, the winter chill hanging in the air. Jin-Ho's father looked troubled as he finally spoke. I used to think that the sleeping sickness just vanished by pure luck, but that doesn't happen. Only me and my wife woke up, out of everyone. I know it was you, Hunter Jin-Woo. Jin-Woo stayed silent, just listening. I couldn't understand why you'd help someone like me, he went on. But then it hit me. You didn't do it for me. You did it for my son. He stopped walking, bowing his head low. I don't even know how to thank you. I don't have much, but if you want half my fortune, a quarter, whatever you ask, it's yours. Jin-Woo shook his head. I don't want anything, he said simply. Just if anything ever happens to me, take care of my family. The older man's eyes filled with emotion. He nodded without hesitation. Later that afternoon, Jin-Woo sat across from the chairman of the Korean Hunters Association, deep in conversation. He spread out photos, satellite images from Shanghai and beyond, showing 8 massive gates around the world. The chairman leaned in, frowning, and he asked cautiously. Jin-Woo shook his head. There's no way to stop them. He stood up and asked the chairman a heavy question. Do you believe me? The chairman met his eyes without hesitation. I do. Without another word, Jin-Woo reached out and touched his forefinger to the chairman's forehead. In a flash, the memories poured into him. Memories of meeting the Lord of Shadows, of ancient wars, of rulers and monarchs clashing in endless bloodshed. When Jin-Woo pulled away, the chairman stumbled back, pale as a ghost. This can't be real, he gasped. He always believed hunters were gifts from the gods, born to protect humanity. But if what he just saw was true, then they were just pawns in a war much older and darker than anyone could have imagined. The chairman realized with a sinking heart that Jin-Woo was going to fight this battle alone, and that he had to help him, no matter what. The next day, representatives from 152 countries gathered in a huge conference hall. Presidents, ministers, guild leaders, the most powerful people in the world. Everyone was buzzing with tension, whispering about the massive gate hanging over Seoul. The chairman sat stiffly, thinking about what Jin-Woo had shown him. He didn't know how the world would react when the truth came out. Then, a soft ripple through the crowd. Jin-Woo appeared silently, stepping out of the shadows. The chairman exhaled heavily. "You're here," he said. Jin-Woo gave a small smile. "I just got here." The chairman leaned closer, whispering, once the truth is out, there's going to be panic. Maybe even riots." Jin-Woo nodded. "I know. Because today, the whole world would learn what was coming." Jin-Woo stepped forward, facing the crowd. He didn't need a microphone. His voice, calm but powerful, carried through the entire hall. "It would be nice to stand here and tell you," he said, "that this gate will close without much trouble. But the truth is, it won't." A heavy silence fell across the room. "What's coming will affect everyone. No one will be able to escape it." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some hunters shouted from their seats, "Why should we believe you? Even national-level hunters can't stop it." Jin-Woo met their doubt head-on. He spoke firmly. "There will be hundreds of monsters, each one stronger than Kamish, the dragon that nearly wiped out humanity once before. And not even national-level hunters will be enough this time." The room exploded in chaos. Politicians, hunters, leaders, all shouting, all demanding proof. And Jin-Woo stood there quietly, ready to show them. Ready to show the world the terrifying truth he had carried alone all this time. The room held its breath, waiting for Jin-Woo to respond, to show them something, anything, that could back up his terrifying claims. That there were creatures far worse than Kamish, that there were thousands of them. Then, without a word, Jin-Woo raised his hand. Behind him, dozens of gates suddenly tore open, glowing ominously. A wave of dark energy filled the hall, and everyone could see it, the swirling power that made their skin crawl. Jin-Woo spoke calmly. "The enemy can open gates," he said, his voice cutting through the panic. "Anywhere, anytime, and their army is massive." The audience started to stir. A man jumped up from the crowd shouting, "Is he one of them? Wasn't it monsters who first came through gates like that to kill us?" Another voice rose up, nervous, accusing. "Can we even trust that these gates aren't traps too? How do we fight back if they're already coming?" Jin-Woo didn't flinch. He told them the only truth there was. "If you see them coming, run. Run as far and as fast as you can." The weight of it hit everyone hard. Fear crept in like a slow, freezing tide. The world they thought they knew was about to collapse. Meanwhile, in a more isolated part of Seoul, Jin-Woo stood alone with his shadow army. They had built something incredible, a giant black castle rising out of the ruins like a dark crown. Jin-Woo stared up at it, half amazed, half annoyed. He called Baru over, who immediately slammed his forehead against the ground in reverence. This little cozy place is where we'll live, huh?" Jin-Woo said sarcastically. "I mean, sure, it's small and everything." Baru shook in fear, crawling low. "This humble castle fully matches the greatness of our king," Jin-Woo sighed. "And why the hell did you hang a flag on top of it?" Before Baru could answer, Baran suddenly threw himself to the ground too. "It was my idea, my liege," he cried out proudly. Jin-Woo raised an eyebrow and asked the more serious question. "If something happens to the commander-in-chief, will the army survive?" Baran straightened. "Our existence is tied to yours, my lord. If your eyes close, so will ours." Jin-Woo nodded slowly. The Shadow Army's greatest strength, their absolute loyalty, was also their greatest weakness. His death would mean their death. Baran spoke again. "My lord, there is no chance of victory in this war." Jin-Woo narrowed his eyes. "What's the strength difference?" Baran answered gravely. "About 100 times. That meant 10 million enemies against them." The next day, the news channels were buzzing with interviews. Top hunters were making appearances, dismissing Jin-Woo's warning as fear-mongering. "That's a load of crap," snorted a Canadian S-rank hunter named Jay Mills during an interview. "If I had Hunter Jin-Woo's contact, I'd tell him myself. Stop spreading nonsense." The reporter tried to push back. Still, Hunter Jin-Woo is one of the greatest hunters alive. But Mills waved it off. "Doesn't mean everything he says is gospel, and you can't just take over all the gates based on one guy's words." Meanwhile, inside the Korean Hunter Association, the chairman was watching all this unfold. He sighed heavily, turning to Jin-Woo. "Looks like some countries, India, Canada, are forming their own raid teams." Jin-Woo simply nodded. "I'm heading to China first. I can't defend 8 fronts at once. I'll wipe out whatever threatens Korea first, then deal with the rest." He was calm, focused. Time was against them now. The next day, Jeal, another elite hunter, got off his flight in China. He was muttering to himself about the bureaucrats and the chaos they were stirring up. But then he spotted Hunter Liu Zhigang waiting for him. Zhigang filled him in fast, pointing up toward the sky. The colossal gate above them loomed, crackling with dark energy. "There are over 100,000 elite Chinese hunters gathered here," Zhigang explained. "These guys aren't just numbers, they're monsters in their own right." At the same time, Jin-Woo summoned his shadow army across the rooftops and streets. To Liu Zhigang, it was an unbelievable sight, an entire sea of elite warriors summoned from nothing. Dragons roared in the skies. Shadows stretched across the city like a second nightfall. One of Jin-Woo's shadow commanders, Baru, popped up proudly, declaring, "The seat to the king's left is mine. How dare anyone else stand there?" Jin-Woo elbowed him hard, whispering, "Shut up! He's my guest." Liu Zhigang stared, wide-eyed. He couldn't believe Jin-Woo could casually bicker with his shadow soldiers like that. But then, the gates began to crack open. Jin-Woo's heart tightened. Something was wrong. Baran frowned. "My king, no magical energy is leaking." The reports came in from other locations, like empty gates, no enemies. Jin-Woo immediately understood it was a trap. They weren't splitting their forces. They were concentrating their armies, all in one place. And that place was exactly where the large group of hunters, those elite gathered forces, were standing, totally unaware. The Monarchs were coming, and they were about to unleash hell on Earth. Japan and Ukraine had stepped up, both countries agreeing to back Jin-Woo in the battle ahead. The planes carrying their hunters were scheduled to leave by the afternoon. Meanwhile, news was coming in fast. The White Fortress discovered deep in Japan's forest had nothing to do with the huge gate hanging ominously above the world. 5 hours left until the gates opened. 5 hours left before humanity would know if Jin-Woo's warning had been real or just fear. Out on the fields in front of the massive gate, the Canadian hunters stood firm. No one flinched. They refused to abandon their homeland, to leave Canada defenseless. Whoever came out of that gate, they were ready to fight. They believed they could win. That belief kept them standing. Finally, it started. A ripple of energy shivered through the air and all eyes locked onto the gate. Out of the swirling darkness, a man stepped forward. Just one man. For a second, the hunters wavered. Maybe Jin-Woo had been wrong? The figure descending looked almost ordinary, human, dressed in armor. The lead hunter squinted at the newcomer and realized something unsettling. This wasn't monster speech. This man was talking. One of the hunters standing nearby muttered, "Don't be surprised. Monsters can learn armor, weapons, even languages. We just never bothered to listen." The Canadian leader's gut twisted. Maybe that's how Jin-Woo had gotten control over the monsters from the first gate, by talking to them. Suddenly, the figure asked, "Are you the king of this land?" The Canadian leader hesitated, then stepped forward proudly. "Yeah," he said, his voice strong. "I'm the king here." The figure smiled slightly. That was all he needed to hear. Meanwhile, far away, Jin-Woo paced anxiously. He needed updates on the situation at the Canadian gate. The only one he could trust was Adam White. Grabbing his phone, he called. "Adam!" Jin-Woo barked. "What's going on over there?" Adam's voice came through, calm but tight. "We're assisting near the gate. No unusual activity? It's quiet. Maybe everything's fine?" But Jin-Woo felt it, deep in his bones. This was wrong. "Adam," he said sharply. "Get out. Leave. Now." Adam hesitated, confused, until he looked up. The hunters standing around him, they were gone. Nothing left but ashes. A chill ran down his spine. He lifted his eyes to the sky and saw them. Dragons. Hundreds of them. Dark wings blotting out the heavens. The monsters weren't just coming, and they were already here. Jin-Woo's heart pounded as he screamed into the phone. "Run, Adam! Run! Now!" He called out to his shadows, desperate, reaching across the world. A massive orc shadow soldier appeared beside Adam, grabbing him protectively. "I'll get you to the Lord," the shadow growled. But it was already too late. From the gate, the monarch appeared. With a cruel grin, he opened his mouth, and fire roared forth. Adam could barely react before the flames engulfed everything around him. Jin-Woo clenched his fists. He had underestimated them. The Monarchs had created an illusion, pretending to spread themselves across 8 gates. But they hadn't split their forces. They had concentrated everything, their entire army, at the farthest point, right where Jin-Woo couldn't reach in time. He realized it too late, and now it was going to be a massacre. The monarch standing amid the burning ruins of Canada whispered to himself, "I'll savor their screams before they're all gone. The music of death is beautiful." He wasn't done. He ordered the dragons, destroy everything, leave nothing behind. The skies darkened as the beasts spread their wings. Meanwhile, across the ocean, the president of the U.S. Hunter Association sat slumped in his office, a bottle half empty on his desk. He watched the live feed as the world burned. Hunters vaporized, civilians crushed, journalists disintegrated, hundreds of dragons, a monstrous insect bigger than skyscrapers, creatures from humanity's worst nightmares. He whispered hoarsely to himself, "They're dead. They're all dead." And soon he knew it wouldn't stop with Canada. They were coming for the US next. There was no one left to stop them. Now he understood why Hunter Jin-Woo had told him so clearly. Run. The world was ending, and there was no one left to save it, except one man. Everything seemed lost. The cities, the hunters, the hope, wiped out in fire and shadow. But suddenly, in the lonely office of the U.S. Association president, something stirred. A shadow rippled across the room. The president froze, staring wide-eyed as a figure materialized from the darkness. Hunter Jin-Woo. Without ceremony, Jin-Woo stepped forward and spoke in a low, firm voice. "I'm looking for something." He hadn't come with permission, he didn't need it. He wanted something important, something hidden in the building's depths. The runestone left behind by Reed. The association president blinked in confusion. Technically, he said, the stone belonged to the Hunter Bureau, not to him personally. But halfway through the sentence, he stopped. What bureau was he even talking about? What America? Everything was about to burn. None of that mattered anymore. The president swallowed hard and apologized. "No, I'm sorry. Take it. You can have it." Still, curiosity gnawed at him. "What do you need it for?" Jin-Woo's eyes darkened. "I'm going to use it. Simple. Final. No room for debate." They descended into the lower floors of the ruined building, heading toward the secured storage. The president, still reeling, couldn't help but ask questions along the way. The monsters. They were sent here by beings called Monarchs, right? But those runestones in their bodies? What are they really? Jin-Woo answered without looking at him. "They're gifts. Tools," he explained. The runestones were left behind when monsters died, not repositories of power. They weren't meant to just cause death and chaos. The Monarchs had been trying to root magic into the earth itself, using skirmishes between humans and monsters as a catalyst. The human sacrifices were just collateral damage. They finally reached the vault. Jin-Woo collected the runestone, heavy with the lingering power of the dragon Reed. Before he left, he had one more stop to make. That night, Jin-Woo appeared at a quiet house, standing before Miss Selner. When she opened the door, her eyes widened in shock. The man standing there was not the Jin-Woo she remembered. Before, the darkness had lingered inside him, hidden beneath the surface. Now, he was the darkness. He had become the Lord of Shadows in full, but his voice was still the same. "I'm still me," he said gently. "Just more." He asked her for a favor. Could she look into his future? Hesitantly, Miss Selner reached out and touched his hand. The moment she did, tears welled in her eyes. She gasped, "You're going to fight alone. No one will even remember." The weight she saw, the loneliness, and it was unbearable. But somehow Jin-Woo would still succeed. He would go farther than any human ever had. She sobbed quietly, overwhelmed by the impossible burden he had chosen to carry. Jin-Woo smiled faintly and apologized for disturbing her. Then he turned away, vanishing into the gathering shadows. Now, atop the tallest tower in the city, Jin-Woo stood alone, overlooking the broken world. He pulled out his phone. One last call he needed to make. Hunter Cha. Her voice answered, full of warmth and exhaustion. They were both drowning in responsibility, but even so, she asked him for a promise. "Please, come see me, at least once." He smiled. "I will, I promise." And with that, he hung up, sealing a promise he swore he would keep, no matter what. Meanwhile, all across the world, armies of hunters were mobilizing. The Eurasian Hunters Federation, the European Association, the African Emergency Force, the United States Hunters Emergency Unit. Hundreds of thousands of hunters marched toward the battlefield, the final battlefield. Far away, one of the Monarchs, standing over the charred remains of fallen hunters, looked up into the blackened sky and muttered, "He's here." The Monarch grinned, sensing the inevitable clash to come. At the same time, high atop his tower, Jin-Woo heard him. He closed his eyes briefly, listening to the distant challenge. Millions had already died, and the enemy was calling him out. But Jin-Woo simply whispered back into the night, "Just wait a little longer." And when they met, the world would never be the same.